Good evening, everyone. I am very glad to see that so many people are interested in becoming more civically engaged and made the time to join us this evening. At last count, I think we have 78 participants, which is probably more people than showed up at my wedding. So thank you for being here. I'm State Senator Josh Newman, and I proudly represent California's 29th Senate District, which includes all or parts of 16 cities across Orange, Los Angeles, and San Bernardino counties. Hopefully, if you're a constituent, but even if not, I think the information you received this evening is relevant to any part of the state. I'm joined here this evening by Catherine Rivera Hernandez, who serves as the appointment secretary to California Governor Gavin Newsom. Prior to her service with the governor's office, Catherine was actually an appointee herself and served as a member of the Agricultural Labor Relations Board across 3 different gubernatorial administrations. Prior to joining the Agricultural Labor Relations Board, Catherine served as Chief Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Governor Gray Davis. In that capacity, she served as the governor's liaison to various state agencies, departments, and boards, including the Health and Human Services Agency, the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the Office of Emergency Services, and the Department of Food and Agriculture. Secretary Rivera Hernandez now has the very important job of shepherding candidates through the appointments process that she once navigated herself. I am thrilled that she is with us this evening to share some of her knowledge and advice to prospective appointees. Assemblymember Sharon Quirk Silva was supposed to join this evening, but unfortunately won't be able to join us tonight due to a last-minute scheduling conflict, but she was kind enough to pass her regards, and her office is happy to refer any interested inquiries with respect to appointments. So to give you some context, many people may not know that under the terms of a number of constitutional and statutory provisions, the governor of California is charged with appointing more than 3,000 people to California's boards and commissions. Board and commissions appointments are influential positions, and the people who fill those seats perform oversight on the agencies that implement the thousands of laws passed by the legislature and governor each year. Joining a board or commission gives the person appointed the ability to shape the state in a specific area, and it is both interesting and impactful to serve as a member of a board or commission. There are so many boards and commissions, and looking at the list, which we'll provide you, you'll realize that there really is something for every interest and every area of expertise. The more boards and commissions that we have, which reflect the diversity of thought of Californians, the better the implementation our policies will be. So my hope this evening is that this workshop inspires many of you to apply. And with that, Catherine, thank you again for being with us this evening. Now it's my pleasure to invite you to provide us with more detail about all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator, for having me. I really appreciate everybody who's took time out of their evenings to participate. It's a very opportune time right now because, as many people know, administrations go through cycles. We will be heading into the last year of our first term. And so as a result, it's just natural to see change. In addition to that, we've had an extraordinary first term with COVID, and COVID fatigue is real. So we will continue to see changes at every level of the administration, as well as on boards and commissions as we head into the end of this year. But it also creates opportunities, which is why workshops like this are so critical to our recruitment efforts. We are moving very large numbers of individuals as we meet with the governor every other week, sometimes every week, depending on the needs of the administration, moving anywhere from 30 to 50 people in each meeting. So I am grateful to have a team of 12 that work in the appointments unit that help the governor to fill the many vacancies that we have. Some of you may already have some familiarity with the appointments process, but for those that don't, I believe tonight's discussion will demystify the process. At least that is my goal, and hopefully prompt you to consider applying yourselves or encouraging others to apply. I think there is a very real belief that the appointments it's an insider's game, essentially. But as you pointed out, with now, we are almost heading towards 4,000 appointments due to the efforts of both the legislature and the governor to broadly address the interests of the state by creating other efforts that people can participate in. So we would not get very far if it was an insider's game. And I also let people know it is not as glamorous as it may sound. I may have a fancy title, but we are an employment agency. So for that reason, we must rely on our online application system available at the governor's website at www.gov.ca.gov. In addition to the application itself, you will find the list that I believe we provided to you of board and commission vacancies that is updated monthly. Another item that I added when I joined the administration is a list of the deputies and their portfolios. I wanted there to be a transparency and an ability for people to go directly to the source for questions or information that they may have about a specific appointment. The other list that I added is a list of current opportunities of paid positions within the administration. Again, trying to encourage individuals to take a look at maybe if they thought about a change in career, joining the administration in a paid capacity. It's a simple list, but it does provide a snapshot of how varied our needs are, and it is also updated regularly. I think the number one question that I get asked in these workshops is, what is the governor looking for in an appointee? And I repeat what he has said many times, and that is that he wants an administration that looks like the people it serves. But when he talks about diversity, it is not just gender and ethnicity anymore. We are really talking about a diversity of experience. We are talking about geography, why these workshops are so important. We are talking about upbringing, which is often a factor of where we live. And really what has led you to want to serve. Now, the application itself is very detailed, and it asks some really sensitive questions. And as the senator mentioned, I have filled it out myself for maybe 5 times now. And so I empathize. And my advice to people with the application is to really look at it as an opportunity to share your story. I have often had people say to me that they didn't apply because they thought maybe there was some part of their work or personal life that they thought might not fit within the administration. We know, this governor in particular knows that people have had very varied experiences, successes and failures. And if you happen to have a comeback story, I've never met a governor more here for that. So just don't take yourself out of the game. Applications are confidential, and they are only seen by the appointments team. Nobody even within the administration sees these applications. And again, our deputies are always open to having those discussions. When we review applications, we will often look at what a candidate has listed as the areas of interest. But we are also very often looking at boards and commissions as a puzzle. So we are looking at the gap that has been created by a vacancy. And that can be a person's certain skill set. Was it a financial person? Was it a manager of some sort? Was it a marketing or communications or a lawyer? And where were they from? Because again, geography matters to this governor greatly. So people are often surprised to find out that when we look for a specific position, we don't simply pull every application that has been filed. And that is why people may very often not get a phone call. We are essentially putting the information of the data that we need in order to fill that vacancy and searching applications based upon that data. The upside to that part of the process is that you may get a call for something you didn't apply for and didn't know that you would be a good fit for. I have had people tell me many times, sorry, I didn't pick up when you called. I thought you were a telemarketer. And I remind them, I am a telemarketer. We all are. We are calling, we are going to try to sell you something and see if it is something that you think you would be interested. Of course, we're always just looking for the right fit. So it's okay to say no. And I will tell you, it will not stop us or deter us from calling you if your name pops up again in a search. So very often you might get a call for something that maybe you hadn't thought of. And again, the deputy would have a discussion with you about why we think you would be a good fit and to assess whether you would be interested in being considered for that position. What I will say is if there is definitely a position that you absolutely know that that is what you want to do and that you are interested in, I would Google it. The one thing that you will get from that is, one, you will be able to go to the board website. You'll be able to see the individuals that serve on that board currently. You could look at the agendas and see how long the meetings are, where they were held pre-COVID and where we might be headed in the future, how complex the issues are, so how much time it might take. The other thing that a Google search will tell you is how controversial a board might be. So if you're the type of person that doesn't want to read your name in the newspaper, it will definitely let you know whether or not that might be a possibility. That's not for everybody. Once we settle and actually have discussions with individuals and people decide that, yes, they would like to be considered, there is a series of interviews that happen. They usually start at a department level. It then moves to an agency level, and every single person is interviewed by the governor's office staff. That includes an appointments deputy, and then usually a group of policy, whether it's legislative, communications, depending on what the position is, or cabinet deputies. And from that point, we make a decision about who would be the right fit. Very often, we will only take in one person. Sometimes we might take in a slate of options into the governor, and he will make a decision. I will tell you that when I go in with him, he does not ask me where somebody went to school. His first question to me is, why do they want to serve? And his second is, what is it about their background that is going to make them a good fit? And that is why these interviews are exactly to make that determination. It is really to get to know the individual. We already see the resume, we see the work experience, we see where you went to school. We really are trying to get to know the candidate themselves, because the governor interviews a very small number of individuals. Most individuals he does not interview. And this is his one chance to get to know the people that are going to serve within his administration. So when we go in there, he makes his decision. The next step is to work with the individual on their bios and then move to a press release. And then, of course, the glamour all wears off, and then that's when the real work begins. We do have an onboarding process for board service, and so that we assist each of our appointees with. It usually involves meeting with an executive director, taking the oath of office. We also might pair you up with another board member to help if there are any questions or process issues, so you have a colleague already to reach out to. And then, of course, there's a Senate confirmation process, which sounds scary. I have, again, been through that several times. And we also assist with that process. And that is really, as the senator knows, that is just the way for the Senate to be able to know who is being appointed. It is not meant to deter or scare individuals. It is simply a process so that they can also get to know the candidates that they ultimately vote and approve off the floor. So with that, I know that we have several questions that people have. So I think I will stop there and answer any questions.
Well, thank you so much for the overview. And so I have the privilege of asking the questions. And so I'm going to start with some of the questions we received, Secretary, in the chat. And the first is from Lisa Getcha. And once one has applied and have met with the folks in the appointments unit, what happens if we don't hear back? Is there a way for someone to follow up? And do we reapply at some point? What is the appropriate time frame? If so, and this is for somebody who probably applied and then did not hear.
So two things. So one is my staff will respond. If you call and you have not heard from them and you want to know where we are in the process, they will absolutely get back to you. They're very good with email. They do have, like I said, there is only 12 of us and 4,000 appointments that are being managed. So they definitely don't have the bandwidth to proactively always reach out to individuals and let them know, because often priorities shift. When I was interviewed by the governor, I was very clear about my desire to be as transparent as possible, and that at times that may mean telling people we are not a well-oiled machine. We are really going with the flow, trying to get things done, trying to move through the process, but priorities shift and they can shift quickly. You could have situations where they might be working on putting several appointees onto a board. This happened with the ALRB when I came off and my colleague came off and there was a vacancy. I found the first person within a few months. I found the last person 6 months later. So one person waited 6 months, the other person waited 6 weeks. So there are times will vary, but the one thing that you will get is do inquire, and they will tell you what is going on at that point in the process and try to provide at least some perspective as to what you can expect going forward. The other question regarding if you've already applied is if you haven't heard, I would reach out. It's most likely that it's part of the puzzle process that we've been putting together, because it may be about geography, or it may be about the skill set, or some other issue where we are looking for a certain data set of somebody. We call it unicorn hunting. We're putting it all into the system and seeing what comes out. But if you're really interested, there might be another area that you might be a good fit for. So I think it's worth establishing that relationship with them. And I will also say that if you look at the list of board vacancies and commissions, and there's something that you want to do, but there's not a vacancy, there will be at some point in the future. We have term limits for most, if not all, of our boards. So if it's something you want to do, I would reach out and ask, so when do you think there's going to be, the process will begin to fill a position there? And am I somebody that might be considered? So at least then you know that. I just really encourage people to establish those relationships with the deputies so that they can provide you with the most up-to-date information and for what you're interested in doing.
Appreciate that. I've got sort of two questions that coming out of your comments submitted by viewers. First, how long are the terms? And does the term of the appointment typically end with the governor's term?
So terms vary. You can have anything from a 2-year term. I think more typical are 3-year terms. We also have 4-year terms. ALRB was a 5-year term. So they do vary depending with the board. Once you are confirmed by the Senate, you usually do not you are not then removed with the election of a new governor. It usually occurs at the end of the term when that term expires. At the same time, as you pointed out, Senator, I went through that process, and my term came up 3 times and I was reappointed. And so that's also still a possibility. But for many of our boards, they may only allow, for example, for you to serve for 2 terms. All of our licensing boards are set up that way. So it may be that after a period of time, you simply cannot serve again. What I will say is, for those people that are still interested in serving and that have been very successful on one board, we usually try to hold on to those people and may often even have a need at a board that may be a little more higher profile. And may ask you to consider serving on a board maybe you didn't think about, but that we may need a proven person to serve on.
And so for folks joining either via this webinar or via Facebook Live, we will be attaching the list of vacancies as well as information into the chat. Somebody on my team will hopefully do that soon, both in the chat section of the webinar, but also in the Facebook Live comment section as well. If you don't get it, please let us know and we'll send it to you via email or some other way. So question for you, Secretary, from somebody who looked online and asks, the online form appears to be generic with only categories of areas for experience and interest. If a person is interested in one or more specific openings, how should they indicate this in the application process?
Yeah, so there is a drop-down menu that lists every single area of interest. And I will tell you, if you have an interest, we have a board for it, very likely. And what we understand is that, as individuals, you may have maybe a background in labor, but you're really interested in geology or in the environment or in energy in addition. So I really encourage people that if there is something that you truly have an interest in, to look through the list and apply for all of those that you might be interested in. I think when we get to the point where we can't tell anymore, is the time to stop. It's not simply just putting everything down, but like I said, we understand that people have varied interests, and so I would definitely express that through the drop-down menu.
And are there any restrictions on residency or citizenship to becoming an appointee?
You do have to be a resident of the state of California, and it usually is proven through your driver's license and where you are registered to vote. You do not have to be a citizen to serve. We have undocumented individuals serving not only throughout our boards and commissions, but throughout the administration. And so that is not a factor that is taken into account. And in some cases, and especially even within our education boards, it's a very important voice to have undocumented individuals in on those, some areas we might actually be looking for that. So it's definitely not a deterrent in any way.
Next question, the money question. Does an appointment to a board or commission come with compensation?
So we have paid boards, we have part-time boards, and we have full-time boards that have various salaries attached to them. Though there are not very many of those. The vast majority of boards, the compensation comes in the form of per diem, and that is meant to try to compensate for the time that we know that people may have to take time off of work or school in order to participate, and or the preparation that might go into that. If we move to a format where we are doing in-person meetings, and when we did that, there's also compensation and reimbursement for travel as well.
And I apologize if you've touched on some of these things, but trying to get to most of the questions.
Right.
What sort of time commitment is expected for the various boards and commissions?
It really does vary. We have some boards that I would describe as part-time jobs. They really do require quite a bit of time, either serving on various committees or just because of the materials that need to be dealt with and read through. Others may require a few hours a month in order to participate in the monthly meetings. So it does vary, and I think one of the best indicators of that is if you take a look at the agendas and the minutes for those boards, and then of course if you have additional follow-up to ask the deputy as well. The other thing that we often do is we will have a candidate talk to the executive director of the board to go to the source to understand what the kind of the month to month looks like for serving on that specific board.
All right, so two related questions, and it'll be obvious why. What about someone with a deep passion and the right background, but maybe of an opposite party from the governor? And somebody else asked a similar question, which is the governor's obviously a Democrat, but are appointments bipartisan?
Yeah, appointments are bipartisan. We do have individuals from every political party serving within our administration. That is usually not part of our search. The only time that it becomes part of our search is there are some boards and commissions that require us to have a certain balance of party preference. And so that's the only time that we might put it in there. But if, when I put in, a certain individual for the horse racing board and I was looking for an attorney and, we ended up with an amazing woman who's, was the first African-American woman to serve on the horse racing board, and she's a Republican. So, it's definitely not it's not a threshold question that we ask as we are searching.
And so with respect to process, Secretary, has the pandemic changed the process at all or changed how people have been contacted or interviewed?
Yeah, drastically. I think there's a balance of the benefits versus how we would do things differently. I definitely miss in-person interviews, but we have had to, because we have had needs, to move to Zoom. On the other hand, it has also allowed us to recognize that appointees may not necessarily have to reside, as it used to be, in Sacramento to serve on certain boards and commissions, because there are ways to fully participate even if you live in a different area, and that some of that may be retained moving as we move forward in order to broaden that diversity of geography.
And so I'm trying to get to everybody's questions. There aren't too many, don't worry. What are some of the most important things that someone should consider before they apply?
I think you should consider the time. I would say the number one obstacle that we run into post-appointment is that people maybe weren't really, didn't realize maybe how much time was going to be taken up. And I think that's one of the reasons why we work really hard on that on the front end. And we do have people who decide at the last minute that maybe I'm not going to have the time, and that's perfectly fine. So I think that's definitely, a consideration. And then also think about, because it will be a question you will be asked, is about what do you want to contribute to that specific role? Why are you interested in it, and what are you thinking you look back and want to have contributed or accomplished during your time serving on that board or commission?
And so, I mean, I think I know the answer here, but it's probably worth reiterating. So there was a question in the chat as to whether or not these were civil service positions for which you're interviewing. Clearly not, right? So what we're looking for here is other than the civil service. These are the correct, Secretary?
Yes, they are volunteer positions unless they are one of the on the other list of the paid administration positions. Yes, correct.
And then somebody asked a question, which is a good one. If you're appointed and you actually already work for a public agency, is that agency required to give time off for an appointee to attend meetings, similar to a military assignment, or is that an individual decision where they would have to negotiate that with their employer and use that as compensatory time off?
Yeah, normally people take time off, and I don't know of any requirement around allowing time. It's one of the reasons, again, when we go through this process, we do talk with people about whether they have been able to talk to their employer about their ability to serve. Some employers do allow time for their employees to participate, and others do not.
Right, and so somebody's asked the question. I know you've talked generally about kind of what the kind of thinking is as you consider candidates, but what are the most important qualifications the governor is looking for in a candidate?
I think he's really looking for a sense of purpose. And it kind of gets back to what I was saying about like what your story is, and also, thinking about what you would want to accomplish. I think we've met some amazing people, and, we hear stories of what people have been through, whether it's been, bankruptcies, or whether it's been, one person traveled, across the country teaching English, to in other countries. I mean, it's kind of like what it is that has prompted your interest to serve, and what it is about your background that kind of has brought you there. That sense of purpose will get you very far in this process. It's probably one of the top questions that this governor cares about. So it's definitely what we are, definitely trying to determine as well within the interview process.
And so now I'm gonna plumb your sort of expertise on categories of appointment. Are there any specific boards or commissions, Secretary, for someone with extensive experience in mental health?
We have a board that is actually the Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission. And I would invite you to take a look at it on the website, because they are slotted, as many of our commissions are, as far as they might have certain criteria that they are looking for. California Volunteers is another one that's like that, where they are looking for specific individuals. It might be somebody with a youth focus or nonprofit focus or some other, focus. It's so I would definitely take a look at that. We also have many boards, licensing boards, that like the Board of Behavioral Services or Sciences, that also deal with mental health issues as well.
Another sort of skill specific question: are there any positions for a retired and certified supply chain professional?
We don't have any boards or commissions that I would say is specific to that. The work around supply chain is coming out of GoBiz, led by Dee Dee Myers. And so I know that they have a lot of efforts where they are engaging the public at a department level, but there isn't something at a governor's level where there is a certain board or commission specifically for supply chain.
And then let me also add, so there's a question from Christy in the chat that's fairly specific. It relates to a particular bill and the provisions of that bill. And so Christy, Alina, if you could just drop your email directly into the chat for Christy, but for folks who are watching, my office can also be helpful. So, don't be afraid to reach out to my office if you have a specific interest. That's also our job. We'll be glad to connect you to the secretary and her team for that. So glad to do that. And so Alina's put her information in the chat. So please feel free to reach out to our office. We're happy to do that. And the chat is moving as I look at it. So Eric in the chat, I know you talked about citizenship, but what about green card holders? What are their, how broad are their opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, since we don't consider anybody's citizenship status, green card holders can absolutely participate in the appointments process.
And then now, this is really specific, but something that Chad says, was obviously look at your website. What does it mean by change slot description next appointment for some of the vacancies? And I'm reading, I think, what has been cut and pasted. And this may be something where my office can be more helpful.
Yeah, because I'm not quite, I don't know what board or commission that.
Yeah, so June, why don't you go ahead and email Alina, and we'll get back to you on that. Here's a question from Andrew. If we apply for a specific position that may not be on the current opening list, will another department contact us for another position that they may, for which they might be a good fit?
So for the paid positions, normally if there is an opening, it will be on that list. Now departments will occasionally advertise and post for positions as well. Those will automatically link you right back into the appointments unit. And so it's just a broader way for us to reach out to people who might be looking at different websites or different efforts. And so we cast a pretty broad net, but the appointments website is where you're going to end up having to fill out the application.
And then Secretary, there's a specific question, but I think it's more general relevance here. So the question is specific to the horse racing board, but I think you can apply this to other commissions. If there's no openings at the moment for a particular commission, how would somebody best keep track of when an opening on the commission about which they're interested comes on?
Yeah, and you could contact the deputy for that board, who is Jay Jefferson, and ask them, because the other issue might be that even if there isn't one right now, we may be planning to reappoint the individual that is there. So it's best to kind of know that up front, and he would be able to tell you, if he thinks we're going to lean one way or the other, or if he thinks we actually might be looking for somebody new there.
And I think, so that, which brings up a point. So, you mentioned earlier that, quite often if somebody is doing good work, they're likely to be reappointed, particularly under the same governor when their term expires. Roughly, what are the kind of percentages of people who are retained versus how often do positions change, or does it depend on the commission?
I feel like there's a lot of change. Many times people who have served, especially if they have served, more than one term, are ready to take on either some other endeavor or to take a break from board service. If it's somebody who is only served for one term, or in some cases, not to get too nuanced, but if you have a term, but it was vacant for a while, we may put you in halfway through the term or a third of the way. And so you'll only serve out that short person. We will, if that has happened, we almost definitely will reappoint you to the next term, because it's just a function of the way the terms were set up, because they are called fixed terms. And so it really does vary, because it's not just about the administration, it's about the individual and what their desire might be to continue to serve or not serve. I will say that on licensing boards, generally, if they're only in one term, then they usually will be reappointed. But we have a lot of people, and this is a really busy time for us because a lot of terms expire at the end of the year, that have served 2 terms. And after that, we don't have a choice. We will be looking to fill those positions. So it's just so different. And there's so many that I'm not really sure what the percentages might be, but what I will say is there are a lot of needs. We have a lot of needs, so you wouldn't be walking in where we don't have people that we need to serve. We absolutely do. I'll make a pitch for the San Bernardino County Fair Board, if somebody has an interest in that. Also, the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board, or the Colorado River Basin Water Control Quality Board. Just to name a few of needs that we have that especially cover some part of your area. Now, I also would say, if you want to be on any of the education boards, or the Film Commission, or the Status on Women and Girls, absolutely, you could jump into that pool. But again, we're going to have that pool is very full, and the competition is much greater. Doesn't mean you shouldn't apply, but I do try to let people know that there are some boards and commissions where, the percentages are going to be much lower as far as the chances, and others where we really need people, and that is really on the licensing boards and especially the public slots for those boards, which are slots that are specifically for individuals who do not have an interest in any way in that area. So you can imagine how difficult it might be to recruit for, the public slot for the podiatry board. But that is where the accountability for the state of California comes into play. And often that is where the relationship with the governor's office comes into play. They tend to be the people that we work with as far as what is happening at the board. So if you see public slot and you're thinking, can't imagine why I would want to serve on that board, think about it, because those are the boards that we need people who, to kind of like come on and really serve as far as, being a public servant for the state of California.
And so, and your point is well taken. So for people who are appointed to those public capacity positions, you might not have a specific expertise, but it's a great way to get exposure and insight into how your government works, and that'll carry over. There was a question about where folks live. Do board or commission members have to live in Sacramento, or can they be from all over?
So for some boards, like for example, the fair boards, you do have to live in that fair board district in order to serve, which makes some sense. That is also true for, say, the water quality control boards. So there are some that have those requirements. The vast majority do not have residency requirements, and we draw from all over the state. And that's specifically true for licensing boards, education boards, like Student Aid Commission. We have a lot of education related boards that are not necessarily UC Regents or Board of Trustees, or Board of Governors, although you do have somebody in your district serving on the Board of Governors. But there are if you have an interest in education, there are many other boards too that you might want to consider.
And Secretary, that is the purpose of the per diem in many cases, to afford appointees the means to travel up to Sacramento for meetings, correct?
Yes.
And so it's probably also worth noting that the Senate plays an important role in confirming appointees or certain appointees to boards and commissions. And so you may sometimes see it'll look like technically a position is vacant or a term is expired, but quite often, that's a function of the legislative process. We're still waiting to take those votes. So not always the case, correct, Secretary, that something may look like a term has expired or somebody's completed their term, but they may simply be waiting for the Senate's reappointment.
Correct. Yeah. And you can also see when you see if it has an SC listed next to it, then that means it is a Senate confirmable position. I think many of them are Senate confirmable positions.
Okay. So just, I think, a couple questions left. So we're getting more. So we've got the Secretary, I think, for an hour. You've been very kind. So 20 more minutes. And so if you wouldn't mind, somebody just asked, you mentioned the need for a San Bernardino board. Do you have additional information? We're glad to get that, but at top of your head, what's the... Yeah.
For the fair board, we definitely need, and that is true of many of our fair boards. Some of them are more popular than others, but we do have vacancies on the San Bernardino County Fair Board, and you can simply click that board on the application website, or if you'd like more information before going through the process of applying, Samantha Diaz is the deputy responsible for all of the fair boards. God bless her. And she is on the website as well, and you can reach out to her.
And I know you mentioned the Santa Ana River. I think it's a conservancy. If you could, so somebody asked, is there? I don't see a PDF with the vacancy, or it's not listed. We're glad to get that to you. So if you wouldn't mind just referencing the exact position, but I think that's Dean. Dean, if you email Alina, we'll get you the information per the Secretary's specifics. Terrific. Can a person serving in an elected position be appointed to also be appointed to a state commissioner board if they're already elected to something?
Yes, we do have elected officials. Many times it's actually required. It's it might be a board that is slotted, and sometimes it has to be a supervisor. Sometimes it's just generally elected official. That's true of many of our criminal justice boards. So it's definitely not, if you're interested, I would definitely reach out if it's a specific board to the deputy, because we do have many boards that elected officials serve on.
And so then there's a question, in the drop down for the application, it asks for applicants to specify their interest. One of our viewers obviously has an interest or an expertise in real estate or anti-drug efforts. How should people try to align their skills with the open positions as it relates to the application process?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, again, if I will, again, this is in my whole transparency vein, and it's something that anybody in the GO has heard me say a million times. Our system is antiquated, and we should be able to have a system where people could simply word search, be able to put environment, water, anti-drug, whatever it might be, and get a list of opportunities. That does not currently exist. So it does require more effort, and I apologize for that on the appointee's part, to kind of go through the list a little bit and see. It is alphabetic, but even then, I know it's not ideal, by any stretch. But what we can do is, if you reach out to any of the deputies, you can ask them the question. Like, I know there's not, say, an anti-drug specific board, or commission, and we will know that. Most of the real estate efforts are done by the actual Department of Real Estate, which is a actual paid department with positions. So we can try to answer those more specific, questions as they come up, because it does make it a little difficult when you're trying to navigate as far as the listing. Hopefully, as you put the letters in, the right board comes up, though.
And again, for folks who may have joined a little bit later, like what we're discussing here today, there's somewhere in the order of 4,000 appointed positions to boards and commissions across the state that the governor's office has responsibility to fill. For permanent positions, that would be a separate link and a separate process if you're looking to have a permanent position with California state government. And we're glad to get you the link to that part. But today's discussion is about, these very broad and very diverse areas that are typically created by statute, and where the governor is called upon to find citizens to serve in those capacities, to give input and insight to the agencies and commissions that are working on a particular issue. Here's a question from a viewer. Do you have to be a politically neutral person to serve this board? Is there any professional code that needs to be adhered to? I think you've touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a line. So, there's obviously ethics codes that would need, to be followed as far as, interests that a person may have, whether it's a personal or financial interest, that type of thing. And that usually, if there's any chance that gets worked out. On the other side of the politically neutral, I wouldn't phrase it that way, because we obviously have a governor that has certain administration priorities. So they may not be political priorities, but they are his priorities, and we try to find people who are aligned with advancing those priorities, in the hopes that is why they would be joining, wanting to join the administration, is that they share in that. Many of the boards, especially in the licensing, area, you're dealing with people's livelihoods. And so that isn't an area really where politics should be present. That's an area where, you need really good judgment and fairness. And so it really just depends on the board, whether it's a policy-driven board or an enforcement board, which I think requires a different type of, mindset coming into it.
And actually, a good question from Michael in the chat. Are references or recommendations required or helpful for applications?
I think they are helpful if they are value added. I will tell you that quality will outweigh quantity with this governor every time. If you have 20 letters, but they don't talk about why those individuals are writing them, they're not going to have the same weight as 3 letters from people who are saying, I accomplished this, or I have this experience with this individual. This is why I think they would be a good fit for your administration. Those are going to go much further than any sort of pro forma or a litany of letters coming in. But they are very helpful. As long as they're quality, added, and they are very helpful.
And so, Secretary, somebody asked the question. I see a lot of vacancies on agriculture. What does this involve?
So they are probably the fair boards because they are called agricultural districts, and every county has one. And it is, I think people maybe think of them because they're called fair boards as simply, oh, it's just fairs. You're running a business, and they are really important because you're serving the economy. So we are often looking for people who would make up, as you would say, a board of directors. People who might have, who either run a business themselves or have served in some part of, whether it's a lot of marketing, right? You're trying to market, you're trying to raise money for the board. If you have a marketing background, a communications background, a legal background, we have very creative people who come to the board with ideas that maybe never had been considered for how to increase revenues. So it is about coming together as a board to essentially run a business that will benefit your county.
And Secretary, we've had some people join kind of midstream. I know you touched on this, but somebody might apply for a specific position that might not be in the current opening. Will another department possibly contact that person for a different position if there's a good fit?
Yeah, normally they wouldn't because they don't have access to our database. We are the only ones that have access to it. And so it is usually us that is reaching out based upon the results that we receive from the data that we put into it, depending on what we are looking for. What we will often do is once we have somebody that is interested in a position, we might then connect them with a department. Now, I'm not saying that if you know somebody, have a personal or professional relationship with somebody in a department or an agency, and they are talking to you about a position and you're interested, absolutely, that can happen as well. You will still have to fill out our application, but they may say, hey, can you go and pull so-and-so's application? They said they're interested and can you talk to them? So we do work together with our principals in order to find and source individuals. And if they come to us and say, I have somebody that I know that you should consider, then we will absolutely do that.
Okay, so I don't see any new questions. I'd ask Erica and Alina and my staff, are there any questions in the Facebook Live chat? Will you be able to allocate a 15-minute phone call to look at a resume and suggest possible fit for a particular commission? I think I know the answer to that question, but I'll ask of you, Catherine.
What I would say is to take a look at your resume and take a look at what you might be interested in, and then reach out to set up a time to talk to one of the deputies. They are going to be, if you talk to me, I'm going to have to go talk to them. They are going to be in the best position to tell you the opportunities that are within their specific portfolios and what they might be looking for. So they really are your resource. But I would recommend you taking a look also to see what you think, because that's going to be one of their first questions to you is what you think you might want to do and what issue area. And then they can definitely provide you with boards and commissions that meet those interests for sure.
And so I think that closes that out. Thank you. So thank you, first of all, to everybody who's participating one way or the other for your thoughtful questions. But more importantly, for being interested in getting more civically engaged. California needs your talents, and we need your perspective. So, Alina, let's once again put the web link to the website. So it's, and I'll say it, www.ca.gov/appointments. You can link to that to find the list of possible appointments. But to Secretary Rivera Hernandez, thank you again for making the time and for providing such a thorough and helpful overview. And I have to say, was not aware of just how challenging and just how sort of broad your responsibilities are. So, my compliments to you and your staff for doing this, this necessary but obviously challenging work, and for your own service. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, we need opportunities like this. So, and hopefully we'll get to a time where we can do these back in person again. So I really appreciate you inviting me.
I really appreciate it. So thank you to everyone for making the time, and everybody enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thanks again.